The message from Cassandra arrived precisely 1 week before the scheduled peace talks. A classified communique, routed through 3 different encryption protocols before reaching the United Terran Confederacy headquarters in Geneva. Eris Thorne, senior diplomat and chief negotiator for the upcoming summit, stared at the holographic display with growing unease. "It's a trap," the message stated plainly. "The Kthar have no intention of peace. They have developed a weapon capable of creating localized space-time instabilities near vital UTC star systems. The talks are merely a distraction while they position their fleet for maximum effect." Eris slumped back in his chair, the weight of 2 decades of diplomatic service suddenly heavy on his shoulders. After years of border skirmishes and proxy conflicts with the Kthar Empire from the Carina Dwarf Galaxy, this peace summit at Elysium 7 Station had represented hope. A chance to end hostilities before they escalated into full-scale interstellar war. Now it seemed that hope was built on quicksand. He looked out the window at the sprawling Geneva complex, where the spires of the UTC headquarters caught the afternoon sunlight. Somewhere out there were billions of citizens who expected him to maintain the peace that had allowed humanity to flourish among the stars. "Computer, contact Marshal Rostova immediately," he said. "Priority Alpha." While the system initiated the secure connection, Eris opened another communication channel. "Gimme Dr. Vance at the Mars Observatory." Within minutes, Eva Rostova's stern face appeared in a holographic window. The commander of Earth's defense fleet was at her post in the Kuiper Belt, where the bulk of humanity's military force maintained constant vigilance. "Marshal Rostova, I've received troubling intelligence," Eris began. "The Cassandra source?" Rostova's expression remained neutral, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "I received the same communication 20 minutes ago. I've already put the fleet on elevated alert status. You believe it's credible? Cassandra has never been wrong before, Ambassador. The question is, what do we do about it?" Before Eris could respond, a second window materialized in the air beside Rostova's. Dr. Ilara Vance appeared, her laboratory on Mars visible behind her. Astrophysicist, particle physicist, and the UTC's leading expert on spatial anomalies. Vance looked as though she hadn't slept in days. "Ambassador, Marshal," she nodded to each in turn. "I was about to contact you both. We've detected something unusual." "Define unusual, Doctor," Rostova said. Vance's fingers danced across an unseen interface. A 3-dimensional star chart appeared in all their displays. "We've been monitoring strange energy ripples for the past 72 hours. At first, I thought it was an equipment malfunction. But now," she highlighted a region of space near the border between UTC territory and Kthar-controlled systems. "These stars are trembling." "Trembling," Eris repeated. "What does that mean?" "It's the best word I can find to describe it," Vance said, frustration evident in her voice. "They're vibrating at quantum levels, emitting energy patterns that don't correspond to any known natural phenomenon. And the vibrations are increasing in frequency and amplitude. The patterns are too regular to be random, too complex to be naturally occurring." Rostova's military mind immediately made the connection. Could this be related to the weapon Cassandra mentioned? Possibly, Vance admitted. But there's something else. These vibrations, they seem to be responding to something. Almost like they're aware. "Stars can't be aware, Doctor," Eris said gently. "Of course not," Vance agreed. "But whatever's causing this phenomenon might be." The 3 leaders of humanity fell silent, each contemplating the implications. "We need to convene the Security Council," Eris finally said. Immediately. For hours later, the 12 members of the UTC Security Council had assembled virtually. The holographic representations of military leaders, political appointees, and colonial governors surrounded Eris in the secure conference room. He presented both Cassandra's warning and Dr. Vance's findings. Now, predictably, the arguments have begun. "We cannot withdraw from these talks based on unverified intelligence and some astronomical curiosity," Governor Richter of the Centauri colonies insisted. "The political consequences will be far less severe than the consequences of having our major star systems destabilized." Admiral Chen interrupted. If the Kthar have developed this weapon, that's a significant if, Governor Santos of Mars countered. Cassandra has been reliable, yes, but even intelligence assets can be compromised or misled. Marshal Rostova, joining from her command center, leaned forward. While you debate, the Kthar continue their preparations. My fleet has detected increased activity at their forward bases. They're mobilizing regardless of what we decide here. And the stars continue to tremble. Dr. Vance added from her laboratory. The effect is spreading to neighboring systems. Eris watched the faces around him, reading the fear, the uncertainty, the political calculations. As chief negotiator, the final recommendation would be his, though the council would need to approve. If we withdraw, he said slowly, we must be prepared for the Kthar to claim we've violated the pre-negotiation agreements. They'll use it as propaganda, possibly as justification for immediate hostilities. And if we don't withdraw? Rostova asked the question everyone was thinking. Eris met her gaze across the digital divide. Then we risk walking into a trap with our eyes wide open. The debate continued for another hour, factions forming and reforming as new points were raised and dismissed. Finally, Eris raised his hand for silence. I've made my decision, he announced. As chief negotiator, I am formally recommending that the United Terran Confederacy withdraw from the scheduled peace talks with the Kthar Empire. Furthermore, I recommend we publicly state our reasons for doing so, presenting the evidence we have about their superweapon development. You want to expose Cassandra? Admiral Chen asked, alarmed. Not the source, Eris clarified. Just the information. The Kthar already know what they're planning. Making it public puts them on the defensive and alerts our own citizens to prepare, Rostova added approvingly. The vote was closer than Eris would have liked, 7-5 in favor of withdrawal and disclosure. But it was enough. As the council members disconnected, only Rostova and Vance remained. I've already begun implementing Aegis protocol, Rostova informed them. Contingency planning for this scenario has been ongoing for months. Aegis? Vance asked. I'm not familiar with that designation. Eris and Rostova exchanged glances. It's a classified defensive strategy, Eris explained. Developed after our last major conflict with the Kthar. It includes evacuation protocols for vulnerable colonies, redeployment of our fleet assets, and other countermeasures. What kind of countermeasures? Vance pressed. Rostova answered. The kind that might benefit from your expertise, Doctor. Report to Jupiter Station tomorrow at 0800. You'll be briefed there. After they disconnected, Eris stood alone in the conference room. In less than 12 hours, he would make an announcement that might lead to war. He'd spent his career trying to prevent exactly this outcome. But as he watched the real-time display of the trembling stars, now highlighted in urgent red on his monitors, he couldn't shake the feeling that something far beyond human understanding was unfolding. The Kthar response came swiftly. 6 hours after Eris Thorne's public statement, withdrawing from the peace talks and accusing the Kthar of developing prohibited weapons technology, Supreme Overlord Zorgal himself appeared on an unsolicited broadcast that overrode UTC communications. The reptilian features of the Kthar leader filled screens across human space. Elongated skull crested with bony ridges, vertical pupils and amber eyes, scaled skin the color of burnished copper. When he spoke, his translator rendered his sibilant language into flat, emotionless standard English. The accusations made by Ambassador Thorne are not only false, they're a transparent attempt to justify the UTC's own military buildup, Zorgal stated. The so-called evidence presented is fabricated. There is no superweapon. The UTC has never desired peace, only time to strengthen their position. They have now shown their true intentions to the galaxy. The broadcast ended with what everyone recognized as a threat. The Kthar Empire will take appropriate measures to ensure the safety of our territory and interests. Any UTC aggression will be met with overwhelming force. Within hours, Kthar battle groups were on the move, pushing toward UTC frontier outposts and colonies. At Jupiter Station, Dr. Alara Vance stared in astonishment at what Marshal Rostova had just shown her. Deep within the massive space station, beyond numerous security checkpoints, lay a laboratory unlike anything she had ever seen. You've been studying the trembling stars phenomenon for months, Vance realized, examining the equipment. Why wasn't I informed? This falls directly under my purview. Need-to-know basis, Rostova replied unapologetically. And now you need to know? Our long-range sensors detected the first anomalies nearly a year ago. Very subtle, easy to dismiss as instrument error. But they've been growing steadily stronger. Vance moved from one station to another, taking in the sophisticated monitoring equipment, the quantum field analyzers, the holographic displays showing star systems throughout UTC space, and beyond. This is part of Aegis, Rostova explained. Not just monitoring, but understanding, and eventually, responding. Responding how? Rostova gestured to the far side of the laboratory, where a team of engineers worked on devices Vance didn't recognize. We've developed a network of space-time disruption devices, similar to the weapon we believe the Cathar have created, but more focused on defense rather than destruction. Based on my research, Vance realized with growing anger, you've been using my published findings on quantum-level spatial manipulation to develop weapons. Defensive systems, Rostova corrected, and now we need your help to perfect them. Before Vance could respond, an alarm sounded. A technician called out, "Marshal, we're detecting Cathar vessels approaching the Proxima Centauri colony. 3 battle groups, heavily armed." "So, it begins," Rostova murmured. She turned to Vance. "Doctor, I understand your ethical concerns, but we're out of time. Your expertise could save millions of lives. Will you help us?" Vance looked at the displays showing the approaching Cathar fleet. Then, at the trembling stars, their vibrations now visibly stronger even to the naked eye on the sensitive equipment. "I'll help," she said finally. "But we need to understand what's happening with these stars. It could be connected to the Cathar weapon, or it could be something else entirely. Something we're all missing." "Agreed," Rostova said. "You'll have whatever resources you need. But our first priority has to be activating the Aegis network before the Cathar can position their weapon." As Rostova left to coordinate the defense of Proxima Centauri, Vance turned back to the displays. The pattern of stellar vibrations had changed again. It almost seemed to be spreading, communicating from one star to another like neurons firing in a vast cosmic brain. "What are you trying to tell us?" she whispered to the trembling stars. The first battle came 3 days later. A Cathar strike force attempted to overwhelm the defenses at Proxima Centauri, clearly expecting to find the colony vulnerable. Instead, they encountered a prepared UTC fleet, bolstered by the first of the Aegis defensive systems. The Cathar attack faltered in the face of unexpected resistance. Their ships, while numerous, struggled against the disruption fields generated by the Aegis devices. The fields didn't destroy the Cathar vessels directly, but created localized distortions in space-time that made precision targeting nearly impossible and disrupted their formation flying. Marshal Rostova, directing the battle from her flagship, watched with grim satisfaction as the Cathar fleet broke off their attack and retreated. "The Aegis network is performing better than expected," her executive officer reported. "Dr. Vance's modifications made the difference," Rostova acknowledged. "But this was only a probing attack. Zorgal is testing our defenses, our resolve. The real offensive is still coming." On Mars, Dr. Vance had assembled a specialized team to study the trembling stars phenomenon. The latest data troubled her deeply. "The vibrations are still increasing in intensity," she explained to her colleagues. "But there's a new development. They seem to be resonating with the Aegis devices when activated." "Resonating how?" asked Dr. Keller, her deputy. "Almost like feedback," Vance said, "as if the stars are responding to our technology. Or perhaps our technology is inadvertently triggering something in them." "That's impossible," another scientist objected. "Stars are fusion reactors, not sentient beings." "I'm not suggesting the stars themselves are responding," Vance clarified. "But perhaps there's a field or force we don't yet understand that permeates space. Something that both our Aegis technology and the Cathar weapon are interacting with." She brought up a three-dimensional model of the affected star systems. The pattern isn't random. It's spreading along specific pathways, like a neural network activating. So what do we do? Keller asked. Vance's expression was determined. We need to go to Titan. Saturn's moon? Why? Because 6 months ago, before any of this started, we detected unusual energy signatures there. Low level, easily dismissed. But now, she highlighted a section of data. The pattern matches the stellar vibrations. Whatever's happening out there, Titan might hold answers. While Vance prepared for her expedition to Titan, Ambassador Thorne was engaged in secret diplomatic efforts. The withdrawal from the Cthar peace talks had created diplomatic ripples throughout the sector. Most species and civilizations had maintained neutrality in a long-simmering conflict between humans and the Cthar. Now, with open hostilities likely, many were reassessing their positions. Thorne had traveled to the neutral world of Osiris, a commercial hub where diverse species conducted trade and diplomacy away from their homeworlds. Here, in a secured chamber within the diplomatic quarter, he met with representatives of the Lyran Confederation. The Lyrans were an ancient species, humanoid, but with distinctive golden skin and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. Technologically advanced and militarily powerful, they had maintained strict neutrality in galactic affairs for millennia. We appreciate your willingness to meet, Ambassador, the Lyran emissary said. The events unfolding between your people and the Cthar concern us. The UTC desires peace, Thorne assured them. Our withdrawal from the talks was necessitated by the Cthar's duplicity. So you claim, the Lyran said. Yet you provide no proof of this superweapon. Thorne had expected this. He placed a data crystal on the table between them. This contains all the intelligence we have, including the original source material that warned us of the trap. I'm authorized to share this with you in complete confidence. The Lyran took the crystal, but did not immediately review it. And what do you seek from the Lyran Confederation, Ambassador Thorne? Not military intervention, Thorne clarified. We fight our own battles. But technological assistance, perhaps. And a clear statement to the Cthar that the Lyrans would view unfavorably any use of weapons that destabilize space-time. Your voice carries weight, even with Zorgol. The Lyrans studied him with those reflective eyes. There's something else happening, is there not? Something beyond this conflict. The stars themselves are disturbed. Thorne concealed his surprise. You've detected the vibrations as well. We have observed much in our long history, Ambassador. These vibrations, they have occurred before. Long ago. What caused them then? What do they mean? The Lyran rose. Review your findings from Saturn's moon. Then we will speak again. As the Lyran departed, Thorne quickly composed a message to Vance on Titan. Whatever she was looking for there had just become even more important. On Titan, Dr. Vance's expedition had made an extraordinary discovery. Beneath the moon's thick atmosphere and methane lakes, they had located a structure that defied explanation. Not natural formation, but not clearly artificial either. A complex of crystalline materials embedded in the moon's crust, extending deep below the surface. The energy signature is a perfect match for the stellar vibrations, Vance reported to Rostova and Thorne via quantum communication. And it's active, reacting to the trembling stars, perhaps even communicating with them. Is it Cthar technology? Rostova asked. Definitely not, Vance said. Carbon dating suggests it's millions of years old, far older than either human or Cthar civilization. The Lyrans mentioned something about the stars being disturbed before, Thorne said, long ago in their history. Then these artifacts could be connected to that previous event, Vance reasoned. We need to understand their purpose. Are they weapons? Monitoring devices? Communication technology? How long will your analysis take? Rostova asked urgently. We've detected massive Cthar fleet movements. Intelligence suggests they're positioning their superweapon. We may have days, not weeks. I don't know, Vance admitted. This technology is beyond anything we've encountered. But there's something else. She hesitated. The artifacts seem to respond to certain brain patterns. When some of my team members are near them, the energy fluctuations change, almost as if they're trying to communicate. not through language, but through consciousness itself. You think these artifacts are alive? Thorne asked skeptically. Not alive, Vance corrected, but perhaps designed to interface with living consciousness, to connect minds with whatever the trembling stars represent. The implications hung in the digital space between them. Continue your work, Dr. Rostova ordered, but be prepared to evacuate on short notice. If the Cthar attacks Sol system directly, Titan won't be safe. As the communication ended, Vance turned back to the alien artifacts. One of her team members, a specialist in xenopsychology with unusually strong empathic abilities, was attempting to establish some form of connection with the crystalline structures. Anything? Vance asked. Not words, the specialist said, eyes closed in concentration, but impressions, a sense of waiting, watching, and she opened her eyes, looking troubled. Fear, not from the artifacts themselves, but from whatever they're connected to. The stars are afraid, Dr. Vance. Stars can't feel fear, Vance said automatically. No, agreed the specialist. But whatever's making them tremble can. The Cthar superweapon was revealed 3 days later. A massive space station, unlike any vessel in their known fleet, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Cthar territory. Immediately, the trembling of nearby stars intensified dramatically. UTC long-range sensors captured images of the station, a fractal construction of impossible angles and extending arms, each terminating in what appeared to be emitter arrays. At its core glowed a singularity, contained and harnessed in ways UTC science had only theorized about. They're positioning it for maximum effect, Rostova reported to the emergency session of the Security Council. Based on its current trajectory, they'll be able to target the Sol system within 48 hours. What exactly will it do? One council member asked. Dr. Vance, participating from Titan, answered. Based on our analysis, it creates cascading quantum disruptions in the fabric of space-time. When targeted at a star, it could potentially accelerate fusion processes, trigger premature nova events, or even collapse the star into a black hole. Can Aegis stop it? Eris Thorne asked. Rostova and Vance exchanged glances. Possibly, Rostova said. The defensive network was designed to counter spatial distortions. But at this scale, we can't be certain. There might be another option, Vance said cautiously. The artifacts on Titan, we've made a breakthrough in understanding them. They appear to be part of an ancient defense system, created by a species we're calling the Star Weavers. A civilization that existed millions of years ago and had technology far beyond our comprehension. And you think these artifacts can stop the Cthar weapon? Admiral Chun asked skeptically. They're connected to the trembling stars phenomenon, Vance explained. In fact, they may have created it. The vibrations aren't a random effect. They're a warning system. The artifacts detect threats to space-time stability and activate a response network that spans the galaxy. So, these Star Weavers left behind some kind of automated defense system? Thorne asked. Not automated, Vance corrected. It requires consciousness, living minds to activate fully. The system seems designed to connect with sentient beings, to be guided by them, rather than operating independently. Why would advanced aliens create a weapon that needs less advanced species to operate it? Someone asked. I don't think it's a weapon, Vance said. At least, not primarily. It's more like a harmonizer, a way to maintain balance in the fabric of space-time. The Star Weavers understood something fundamental about the universe that we're only beginning to glimpse. Consciousness itself may be woven into the cosmic structure. Silence fell as the council members absorbed this. Whether it's a weapon or a harmonizer, Rostova said finally, can it stop the Cthar? Possibly, Vance admitted, but it would require an unprecedented mental link between multiple consciousness-sensitive individuals and the artifact network. We've begun preliminary tests, but we're out of time for tests, Rostova interrupted. The Cthar weapon will be in range of Sol within 48 hours. We need to deploy everything we have. I agree, Thorne said. Dr. Vance, assemble whatever team you need for this connection attempt. Marshal Rostova, position the fleet to buy them time. and I'll make one final diplomatic push with the Lyrans. They knew about these artifacts. They may know how to activate them properly. As the council meeting ended, Vance looked out at the methane lakes of Titan, beneath which lay artifacts of unimaginable antiquity. Somewhere out there, the stars were trembling more violently than ever, and a weapon of mass destruction was moving inexorably toward the cradle of humanity. Time was running out. The final confrontation came more swiftly than anyone had anticipated. The Kthar's superweapon, which they called the Void Hammer, accelerated its approach. Whether they had detected the activity on Titan or simply decided to strike before the Aegis network could be fully implemented, the result was the same. Sol System had less than 24 hours. On Titan, Dr. Vance had assembled a unique team. 20 individuals from across UTC space, each with unusually high empathic or psionic sensitivity. Some were trained telepaths, others natural empaths. A few were even religious mystics whose meditative practices had heightened their mental sensitivity. Together, they surrounded the central artifact chamber, attempting to form a collective consciousness that could interface with the ancient technology. Ambassador Thorn had succeeded in bringing Lyran observers. 3 of their consciousness specialists joined the circle, their ancient knowledge proving invaluable. The Star Weavers believed consciousness was the fundamental force of creation, the senior Lyran explained. Not an emergent property of complex brains, but a field that permeates the universe, which brains tap into and express. Like the unified field theory, but for minds, Vance suggested. Precisely. These artifacts are conduits, allowing localized consciousness to connect with a broader field, what you might call the cosmic consciousness. Marshal Rostova, meanwhile, had positioned the UTC fleet in a defensive formation around the Sol System. The Aegis network was fully activated, creating a web of spatial distortions that would, in theory, deflect or absorb the energy from the Void Hammer. We've detected the Kthar fleet is escorting the weapon, her tactical officer reported. Multiple battle groups, heavily armed. They're expecting resistance, Rostova noted. Maintain position. Our priority is defending the system long enough for Dr. Vance to activate the artifacts. On the command carrier of the Kthar fleet, Supreme Overlord Zorgol watched the approaching human defenses with disdain. Their Aegis network is pathetic, he told his commanders. A crude attempt to mimic technology they barely understand. It will fail. The stellar disturbances continue to increase, Overlord, one commander noted cautiously. Some of our scientists express concern about proceeding. Superstition, Zorgol dismissed. The stars have no consciousness, no will. They are merely fuel for the greater species to harness. The trembling is simply a reaction to the power of our Void Hammer. He fixed the commander with a cold stare. Prepare to fire the moment we are in range. Back on Titan, the consciousness link was forming. The 23 minds, human and Lyran, had entered a collective meditative state, guided by the Lyran specialists. Their brain patterns, monitored by Vance's team, showed extraordinary synchronization. They're connecting with the artifacts, Vance reported to Thorn, who observed from a distance. The energy signatures are aligning. Suddenly, the entire chamber illuminated with blue-white light. The artifacts, dormant for millions of years, awakened fully. Crystalline structures throughout Titan's crust responded, creating a network of light visible even through the thick atmosphere. In space, the stars' trembling changed. No longer chaotic vibrations, they began to pulse in unison. A coordinated wave of energy swept across space, visible on sensors throughout both fleets. What is happening? Zorgol demanded as his ship's instruments registered the phenomenon. The stellar vibrations have synchronized, his science officer reported. They're generating some kind of harmonic field. It's interfering with our targeting systems. Compensate, Zorgol ordered. Fire the Void Hammer. The Kthar superweapon activated. At its core, the contained singularity pulsed with dark energy. The emitter arrays aligned, focusing a beam of distorted space-time toward the heart of the Sol System, toward Earth's sun. Rostova watched on her displays as the weapon fired. Aegis network at full power, she ordered. All ships brace for impact. But the expected devastating blast never reached its target. As the beam of warped space-time shot forth from the void hammer, the synchronized stellar vibrations, now a coherent wave of energy, intersected with it. Instead of continuing toward Sol, the beam curved, caught in what appeared to be a localized folding of space itself. The weapon's energy is being redirected, Rostova's science officer reported in astonishment. The harmonic field is creating a spatial corridor, channeling the blast away from the system. On Titan, the linked minds experience something extraordinary. Through the artifact network, they perceive the universe not as separate objects in empty space, but as an interconnected web of energy and consciousness. The stars weren't merely trembling. They were communicating, participating in a cosmic conversation that had continued for billions of years. And now, guided by the collective will of 23 minds, that cosmic network responded to the threat. The redirected energy from the void hammer was channeled into empty interstellar space, harmlessly dispersing in a spectacular display of light and energy. But something else was happening too. The harmonic field generated by the synchronized stars washed over both fleets. While UTC vessels experienced only a mild, tingling sensation reported by crew members, the effect on the Cathar was profound. Throughout the Cathar fleet, individual soldiers and officers suddenly experienced an unprecedented mental clarity. The collective consciousness that had touched the artifact network now brushed against their minds as well. Not controlling or invasive, but revealing, showing interconnections, consequences, the ultimate futility of Zorgol's path of destruction. On the Cathar command carrier, confusion reigned. Officers stared at each other, centuries of rigid hierarchical conditioning suddenly challenged by a new awareness. "What have you done to my crew?" Zorgol raged, seeing the hesitation around him. "Fire again. Destroy them." But his second-in-command, Commander Krell, stepped forward. "No, Overlord. This ends now." "Treason." Zorgol reached for his ceremonial blade, but found himself restrained by his own honor guard. Around the bridge, other officers stood with Krell. "We have seen truth," Krell said simply. "The universe is not ours to break." Similar scenes played out across the Cathar fleet. Not a full rebellion. Most ships remained loyal to the Empire, but enough dissent to create chaos in their command structure. The unified attack faltered. On Titan, the linked minds began to disengage, the process carefully managed by the Lyran specialists. As they returned to individual consciousness, many wept or sat in stunned silence, forever changed by what they had experienced. "It worked," Vance whispered, reading the incoming data. The Void Hammer's energy was redirected, and something happened to the Cathar fleet. "They're in disarray." Thorn's communication device chimed. It was Rostova. "The Cathar fleet is fragmenting," she reported. "Several vessels are breaking formation, broadcasting on open channels. They're requesting parley." "Zorgol?" Thorn asked, apparently detained by his own officers. "A Commander Krell is requesting direct communication with you, Ambassador." Thorn looked at Vance, then at the Lyran observers. "What just happened out there?" The senior Lyran's expression was serene. The Star Weavers understood that consciousness, when properly unified, can influence reality at the most fundamental level. Today, 23 minds touched that understanding, if only briefly. The result speaks for itself. So the harmonic field didn't just redirect the weapon. It harmonized consciousness as well, not controlling minds, but revealing connections that were always there, beneath the surface. The Cathar who responded were already questioning their path. They simply needed to see clearly. Thor nodded slowly. "Open a channel to Commander Krell," he told Rostova. "Let's see where this leads." 3 months later, representatives from the United Terran Confederacy, the newly formed Cathar Republic, formerly the Empire, and a Lyran Confederation met on Elysium 7 station, the same location where the failed peace talks had been scheduled. Ambassador Eris Thorn led the human delegation. Commander Krell, now first speaker of the Cathar Transitional Council, represented as people. And for the first time in millennia, the Lyrans had sent their High Mediator to participate directly in interspecies negotiations. The treaty they crafted went far beyond a simple cessation of hostilities. It established foundations for cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, and mutual defense. Most importantly, it created a framework for studying and protecting the artifact network and the harmonic field it controlled, what was now being called the stellar consciousness. The Star Weavers left these tools not as weapons, but as teachers, the Lyranheim Mediator explained during one session. They understood that younger species would eventually reach a technological threshold where they could destroy themselves and damage the cosmic fabric. The artifacts are guides, helping us recognize our place in the greater pattern before we unravel it. After the formal signing ceremony, Thorn found himself standing beside Krell on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. The trembling had subsided now, the vibrations settling into a gentle, barely perceptible rhythm. "They're still watching," Krell noted, his translator rendering his sibilant speech into smooth English. "Still waiting." "For what?" Thorn asked. Krell's reptilian features formed what Thorn had learned to recognize as a contemplative expression. "For us to join them, perhaps. Not now, not soon. But eventually, when we're ready." Marshal Rostova approached, nodding respectfully to Krell. Her role had transformed as well. She now led a joint security force tasked with protecting the artifact sites throughout the sector. "Dr. Vance's team has identified 3 more artifact caches," she informed them, "on worlds throughout the sector. Always hidden, always waiting." "And the volunteers who connected with the network?" Thorn asked. "Changed," Rostova said simply. "Not in any dangerous way, but they see things differently now. Many have joined Vance's research team. Others are working with the Lyrans to understand the experience." "And the Void Hammer?" Krell asked. "Dismantled under joint supervision," Rostova assured him. "Its power source has been neutralized." They stood in comfortable silence, 3 individuals who had been enemies only months before, now united in a common understanding. "It's ironic," Thorn said finally. "By withdrawing from peace talks we thought were a trap, we stumbled into a true peace beyond anything we could have negotiated." "The universe has its own wisdom," Krell observed, "greater than any single species." As if in response, the stars seemed to pulse slightly brighter for a moment, a gentle reminder of the consciousness that permeated all things, waiting patiently for the younger races to mature enough to join the cosmic conversation that had continued since the first light dawned. Humanity had withdrawn from peace talks. The stars had trembled, and in that trembling, a new harmony had been found.